Yes, sir. What is going on, y'all? Happy Friday to everybody, and welcome to the Coach Cool podcast for episode number 109, our Friday discussion with Mr. Ben Malcolmson. And this is a really exciting one for me today because I had the opportunity to read his guy's book last summer. And I had no intention of reading this thing, didn't know who he was, didn't even know about the book, but I was roaming the aisles of the bookstore one day looking for a new one to pick up, and I see this book titled Walk On, with this guy's face on, a big smile and all. So I walk over, start reading a little bit, the first few pages, and I was immediately hooked. And he kind of talks about his walk-on story in there at the University of Southern California. I'm talking about his faith, his journey, and kind of what he's got going on right now. And I don't know, there's just something about the way he articulated his words and his story and whatnot. I just heavily gravitated towards it. So I devoured the whole thing. A few months later, I had an itch to hit him up and ask if he wanted to hop on for an episode in regards to this podcast, and he said, yes, sir, absolutely, and we are just making that happen now, and I am absolutely ecstatic for you guys to hear this conversation today. A lot of learning, a lot of value, and just like a lot of the people I have on here, I don't really know what to expect when it comes to these conversations, and as it unfolds, it just keeps getting better and better, more organic, we're flowing, and as you guys listen to this thing today, I think you're going to feel the same about Ben. So if you guys get a chance after you listen, go check him out, his website. I'll tag it and all this stuff as well so you guys can click on it and go. But phenomenal conversation today. A ton of value, a ton of great stuff in this thing, and I hope you guys enjoy. So, again, welcome to the Coach Cool podcast. Happy Friday to everybody. And we are going to rock out episode number 109, Friday discussion with Mr. Ben Malcolmson. Let's get it, y'all. All right, y'all, it is time to kick off this conversation, and I am ecstatic for this one. I feel like I've known this dude for a long time after reading his book and his story and watching some different stuff on the internet. I feel like I've known this guy for a while, but this is the first time we've ever kind of interacted, and I'm just really excited to hear more of his insights into his story and hear it from his perspective during this conversation. And he's all the way out on the West Coast right now, Seattle, Washington. So appreciate him for taking the time and carving out some time of a busy schedule. So without further ado, y'all, it is my pleasure and most certainly my honor to welcome Mr. Ben Malcolmson to the Coach Cool podcast today. Ben, thank you so much for coming on today, man. Really looking forward to this thing. So let's get it going, dude.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so good to be with you and everyone listening out there.
No doubt. No doubt, baby. And let's kick it off like this, Ben. In terms of your background, just real quick, nothing crazy. But in terms of kind of the lineage over the course of your life, or maybe from college on, whatever, just from your perspective, you can kind of give us a little lineage and background on who you are, where you come from, some things that have kind of happened along the way that have gotten to this point, and just kind of what you're doing right now, dude. I think that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and then went to school out in California, University of Southern California, USC, and just went out as a normal student trying to find his way through college, and changed my major about 4 times, and finally figured out I wanted to be a sports writer. So I became a journalism major and started writing for the school newspaper, and then started covering the football team at USC, and it was like right place at the right time. It was right during USC's glory years in the 2000s. And for 3 years I got to cover the team, and it was a dream job in college. I mean, I was every single home and away game and 2 Heisman Trophy ceremonies and 3 national championship football games. And the team almost won all 3. I mean, it was just, if it wasn't for Vince Young scoring there at the very end, which I'm sure a lot of college football fans can remember, USC would have won 3 straight.
Yep.
And so those are the years I was covering the team for the school newspaper, and it was an incredible experience. And then, I mean, I'm sure we'll go into it deeper in the show, but ended up trying out for the football team to write an article, and I hadn't played football since 5th grade, so this was going to be just kind of a total joke, and I could write an article from a first-person perspective and really bring people on the inside. And I was 165 pounds, and I was only at the tryout to write an article. I had no intention of doing anything beyond that, just with my lack of football pedigree. And so I go through the tryout and ended up making the team. Total fluke thing, like miraculous. I could have never anticipated something like that. And there I was, a wide receiver on the number one team in the country all of a sudden. So I played that one season, and a lot of crazy things happened, and just really exciting, amazing story of just purpose in that whole season. And then when that whole journey ended there at USC, I ended up starting to work for Coach Pete Carroll there at USC and worked for him for 3 years down there. And then here we are in Seattle for the last 11 years. So
Wow.
I've been kind of alongside Coach Carroll in various roles, kind of as his right-hand guy for the last 14 years or so. So it's been quite the journey. Obviously some incredible memories, both there at USC and then with the Seahawks for these last 11 seasons with Super Bowl and everything else in between. It's been a blast.
For sure. For sure. And we will most certainly delve into that story because it is an absolutely incredible one. And we were talking offline a little bit, but kind of how I came to reading Ben's book, and I was just skimming the aisles of a bookstore. I don't even remember where I was at. And I just see this title, Walk On. And for whatever reason, obviously I think people who tune into this thing regularly know I was a walk-on myself up at Michigan State. So when I saw that title, it immediately spoke to me. And as soon as I started this thing, I ingested it in like 2 days. And I knew from that onset that I wanted to talk to this guy and get to know him, and to kind of have him on air today is going to mean a lot to me. And I'm really looking forward to this thing. So that's a great place to start with that, Ben. Now let's take it back a little bit, dude, in terms of kind of high school. You said you were from Dallas, Texas, and you end up going to University of Southern California, the beaches, the palm trees. In terms of kind of choosing a place like USC, coming from a place like that, was there something in particular that kind of drove you out there? Were you always kind of a fan of the Trojans? Like, what kind of went into that decision for you to attend USC?
Yeah, I had never been to California before going out there, so it was one of those things where I got this letter from USC telling me about this program they had. And I was like, man, might as well give it a try. I see California on movies and TV shows, so it looks pretty nice out there, and do something different than Texas. So I just kind of took a swing at it, and it landed just an incredible opportunity. Came with a scholarship and all that. So I can't pass this up. I get to go to California, and I get a scholarship. Might as well go for it.
Right, I got you. And when you originally went out to USC, you mentioned kind of the journalism stuff. Was that something you had identified that you wanted to major in right from the get, or did that kind of formulate over time once you got there?
Yeah, it took me a while to stumble into it. I was definitely lost and trying to find my way the first year or so of college. I changed my major a bunch of times and just didn't know what I wanted to do. I was always the kid growing up that when people were like, "Oh, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you get older?" And
yeah,
I never knew, or if I did say something, it was changing again the next week anyway. So I never had one of those lifelong dreams of my career. So it took me a while to find that journalism thing. But I just remember growing up reading Sports Illustrated every week that it came out, and read the sports section of the newspaper all the time. Loved watching SportsCenter, so I figured, why don't I give it a shot and try to be a journalist myself?
Got you. No, that's really cool. And I think a lot of kids are going through that, right? Even more so today. And I think it's more accepted now, where in terms of college, it's not necessarily you pick something, you got to stick it out. Like, it's okay to bounce around a little bit, not just kind of do it at will, but it's okay to try things out and do different things. So I don't know. I think I used to be of the old adage where you choose something, you stick to it, because that shows, you have commitment and you have drive and you have character. Well, that opinion for me is kind of changing now, most certainly in my professional life as I've bounced around doing different things. So when it came for you and kind of choosing that major, I know you said talking about the sports section and whatnot, but I'm really big on just trying different things and seeing if you like them or you're passionate about them. So I think it's one thing to choose kind of, oh, I'm going to be a journalist, I want to do this journalism major thing. Well, how did you kind of go about knowing or trying it out that, this is kind of, for me, I really enjoy doing this stuff? Was it a job? Was it a friend? Was it whatever? Like, what kind of gravitated you towards that even more once you did identify that as your major?
Yeah, like once I started getting opportunities, so writing for the school newspaper and all the other cool opportunities I got for writing, it opened my eyes up. It's like something I was relatively good at, and it's something I really enjoyed because I was around sports, and it just seemed a lot more interesting and exciting than just sitting at a desk, doing
Absolutely.
math or whatever other subjects I wasn't good at. So I was like, might as well do something where I really enjoy being around sports. And the writing part came relatively easy for me, and it was just, I was enjoying it, and there was a passion behind it. So I figured, I was like, I might as well just keep doing it. It's fun.
Got you. No, that's awesome. And I feel like when I hear journalism, I think about creative people, because, when I do this podcast or do this post, like I'm racking my brain every week just to write one kind of small post to the website, but I see y'all just cranking out articles left and right. And I always thought that was so cool. And I think that's been one of the really challenging and cool parts of doing this for me, is coming up with new topics and ideas and bringing value with each and every one. And things like that. So again, I think when reading your book, the reason I gravitated towards it so heavily, I think, is because you said, now we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty of the story that I want everybody to hear, is you wanted to try out for the football team for the sake of just writing a story. Now, I think when you hear about people trying out for teams, they kind of have this end goal in mind. They really want to make the team. They really want to do it. It's a lifelong thing. And here you are just kind of like, yeah, I want to write a story and I'm just going to try out for the team. And it is what it is. So is that kind of how it started, where the sole purpose behind it was just to write this article, or did kind of deep down you're like, maybe I'm going to do it, but at the same time, it'd kind of be pretty cool if I make the team too? Like, what kind of went into that for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I hadn't played football since 5th grade, and I was really small growing up. I was a late bloomer and just severely undersized. So football was never really an option for me growing up. And so I just enjoyed watching it from a distance. And I was a track runner in high school. And then when I got to college, I mean, I played all the intramurals, but that was as close as I was going to get to playing organized sports going forward. And so when this tryout idea came up and I looked into writing this article for the school newspaper about the tryout process, the only intent behind it was just to shine a light on this process that no one really knew about. I mean, no one knew what a tryout entailed, and no one knew the guys that were trying out. So I figured, why don't I bring some attention to these guys, because they never get articles written about them or anything like that. I mean, what the life of a walk-on is like.
Yeah.
You're extremely under the radar, and you don't get newspaper articles written about you. So I figured, why don't I shine a light on these guys and go through the tryout. And got home that night and I started writing my story. And then a buddy of mine was asking me about it, and I didn't tell many people, but he starts bugging me, and he's like, well, what if you actually make the team? And I just laughed at him, because it's like, there's no possible way I could make the team, because this is the number one team in the country. And, this is like the pinnacle of college football.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything was stacked against me. I was a newspaper reporter. I mean, I hadn't played football since 5th grade when I was a defensive lineman. It's just like, this is not even possible. So when I got the call the next day, it was just the most shocking thing ever, because it never even crossed my mind that I could possibly make the team.
Yeah.
And there I was all of a sudden on the team. So it was crazy.
I love it. That's so cool. Was it a phone call? Because kind of my story, I'm just going to give a little background here too, was I was actually at a Division III school playing football and baseball. And for our baseball spring trip, we were down in Florida playing some games and whatnot. And in the back of my mind, I always wanted to walk on, or at least try to play at a bigger university. So we had a few contacts in Michigan State, and we contacted him, whatever. Hadn't really heard in a while. And we're sitting at dinner, and my dad gets a call, and it's from Mark D'Antonio. He leaves a voicemail, whatever, the head coach of Michigan State. And I'm sitting there freaking out like, yo, this must be a dream. Someone's prank calling us. Like, I don't even know. It didn't even seem real until we actually called back, and obviously it was him, and it all worked out. Whatnot. But for you, like, what was the reaction to getting a call like that? Did you think someone was prank calling you, or just what was the initial reaction to get you? Okay, that's what I figured. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no way this is real. So this call I'm getting, I'm like, this has got to be a prank. And then when the lady on the other end of the line was like, no, this is real. Your name's on the list. I hopped on my bike and pedaled as fast as I could to the football building to make sure this was legit. And then it hits me as I'm pulling up to the football building that Coach Carroll, he's renowned for pulling pranks. So, I mean, he's going to be pulling a prank on me, like put my name on the list and then I'll point and laugh at me as I show up. So,
gotcha.
I mean, I was fully expecting Coach to just pull a nice little prank on me, but it was legit. And there I was on the team. It was crazy.
That's perfect. That's so cool. That's so cool. And I think when people hear that, like, oh, you made the team, I touched on this a few weeks ago with one of my boys that was in NFL as an undrafted guy. And when you hear like, oh, they made the team or they signed to a team, well, that's not necessarily meaning they're on the team. You still got to make the team. You got to go through camp. You got to go through workouts, whatever. And that is most certainly the case for your situation as well. And through the book, you kind of explain how that process most certainly was not an easy one. Injuries, your skill level, things like that certainly played a part in the rigorous process of that also. When you kind of think back to that process on all the ups and the downs of what kind of went on, what were some of the biggest takeaways or learnings that you had at that point in time throughout that 1 year with the program?
Oh man, there were so many things I learned that year. It was definitely a transformative experience for me in so many ways. I mean, the biggest thing I learned was just that I have purpose, like regardless whether you can see it or not in the moment, is that we all have purpose. And sometimes you play a small little part in a larger story, but you do have an incredible purpose exactly where you're at. And then also just learn the ability that we have to overcome challenges, that just because something hard is happening doesn't mean it's the end of your story, that there's always another thing coming. There's always another part of this story that's unfolding. So really just battling through challenges and always holding on to hope that things are going to get better and better days are ahead. So I could talk forever on all the lessons I learned. But yeah, that's just a start right there.
I got you. No, that's perfect. And I want to dig a little bit deeper with that real quick, just because I think sometimes it's easy for us to kind of sit on the other side of it when things have gotten better and say, oh, you're always going to come out the other side, or you're going to learn all these things to the situation. But when you're actually in that situation and in those moments, those perspectives can most certainly escape us sometimes. So I know it's probably hard to think back. It was a little while ago, but when you were in those moments, were you still able to maintain that perspective, or were there some pretty dark times where you're like, yo, maybe I want to call it quits? This isn't for me. And, if so, how did you kind of pull yourself out of that and still maintain that proper perspective and persevere regardless of what was kind of placed in front of you?
Oh, totally. There were so many days I wanted to quit, whether it was physically demanding or mentally challenging or emotionally just draining. I mean, there were so many times when I was like, maybe I should just give up. And there were a lot of times, honestly, when my dad was like, hey, maybe it's time to move on. I had a serious shoulder injury and I had to get surgery. And he was kind of saying, well, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe this is a sign that you're not made for this and you should go do something else. But I just had this overwhelming sense that I had a purpose there and that I really needed to be a part of that team, and it was worth overcoming my challenges. And that sense of purpose got me through. And I think that's been a huge part of my life ever since then, is just how our purpose is bigger than our problems and our purpose is bigger than our pain. And that really gets us through those hard days when we have problems, when we have pain, when we hold on to the purpose that we have. I think that's something that can really be fuel and really keep you going and help you persevere.
That's dope. Yeah, that's perfect. So, say that line one more time. The purpose thing. Purpose is better than
our purpose. What was it? Is bigger. Yeah, our purpose is bigger than our pain, and our purpose is bigger than our problems. Okay, that's a game changer right there, Ben. I'm gonna steal that one from you, dog. That might show up on Instagram tomorrow or something. That might be on Twitter tomorrow. I'm gonna tag you, dude. That's incredible. I don't copyright that, so
okay. I got you. I'll still give you a little shout out if I do use it. No, man, that's fantastic. I love it. And again, I think it's really easy to sit on the other side of things once the situation has settled down and things are cooled off a little bit and say, oh yeah, it's all good. You're going to be good. Talking to people who are in those situations or maybe coming up on them. But no, I think you have to be a little bit more real with yourself and dive a little bit deeper and revisit those times when you were struggling, because one, obviously you have to learn from it, but if you want to help others learn from those situations as well, you can't just be positive Pete on the other side. You got to be a little bit more real with it and help people in that regard with that realness. And, so what you just articulated, I think, is really powerful. So thank you for that. All right. So that 1 year's up. You guys had a fantastic year. I know you got a little you got in on the last play of the season or something like that. Is that correct in terms of taking the knee? What was that like for you?
Yeah, last play of the regular season. We're playing at home against Notre Dame. 92,000 people. It was pretty amazing. Unfortunately, no storybook ending. I didn't catch the winning touchdown or anything. We were up by 20 points. So,
Gotcha.
I just got my one play of the quarterback kneel, and it was an incredible experience, obviously, just being a part of it and being officially a member of the team in terms of getting some playing time, even though it was only one play and I didn't do anything. But it was a pretty special experience.
No doubt. All that hard work paid off. And I think that's an incredible sign of that, no doubt. Now, okay, so the year's up. Football's over. It's time to move on. And again, kind of relating this back to real life and not just in your specific situation, but I think for a lot of people, whether it's they're done playing ball or college is over, they got to find a job and they're trying to figure out what they want to do. What did that look like for you? And I know, again, you've touched on what it kind of ended up being, but in terms of trying to decide what was going to be next, what did those steps look like for you?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate because when I finished up my illustrious 1-year playing career, when that whole thing ended, I was finishing up my degree there on campus, and it was one of those just crazy moments where I was walking on campus and I ran into Coach Carroll about a month after the season ended. And I mean, USC is not the biggest campus, but it's also not like we're going to run into everyone all the time.
Right.
And ran into him, and I was like, "Oh, what's up, Coach?" And just started talking to him, and I honestly just wanted to thank him for the experience, and was just so appreciative. And he's like, "I'm so glad we ran into each other because I have an idea about something. I think you'd be the perfect person for it. Come by my office tomorrow." But he didn't give me any information, like any details or anything. So of course I was like staying up all night, like what could that possibly be? And I get to the office the next day, and we had a meeting. And this was in 2007, so it was web stuff was still relatively new, and social media stuff hadn't even started yet. And he had this idea to start a kind of a website all about the team, kind of from the inside. And he's like, "You'd be the perfect person to run it because you have the writing experience and you've been on the inside. So what if you ran this website?" And so, of course, I was not going to turn that opportunity down, and took him up on that and started this website from nothing. And we really just brought our fans on the inside. And I mean, now it's like really commonplace, the stuff you see on Instagram from teams and on Twitter and all that. You're bringing people on the inside in the locker room and on the sideline and all that. But this is stuff we were doing 13 years ago and doing something that had never really been done before. And then this thing called Twitter pops up out of nowhere. And we hop on Twitter, and Coach Carroll becomes a celebrity on Twitter, one of the first ones there. And then Instagram and Facebook. I mean, we just kept popping up on these social media sites, and it just developed this following for our team and for Coach Carroll. And here he is now, all these years later. He's got 2.5 million followers on Twitter and 1 million followers on Instagram. I mean, just it's crazy how this has kind of skyrocketed since then, and it's been so fun. And so that really started to form our relationship, because we kind of had to work in tandem on it to develop this website, really bringing people on the inside. And then when he moved to Seattle to take the Seahawks job in 2010, he asked me to move up to kind of do the same thing up in Seattle, but my job quickly transitioned to kind of just be his right hand, his assistant there. And it's been quite the journey since then.
That's really cool. That's so cool. Now, when it comes to the whole social media thing, you said it was kind of first on the scene. And I know Pete Carroll has always been kind of, at least from a media perspective, as this visionary, kind of an innovator. He's always on the cutting edge of something, or always has these kind of quirky ideas or whatever. So was this something that you knew was going to pop, or was it more like, oh, Coach Carroll wants me to do it, he thinks I'd be good at it, so I'm just going to roll with it? Or was it something like, okay, I could potentially see this pop and it's going to be a good fit? Or did you just kind of jump head first because, hey, Coach Carroll wants me to do it, so I'm going to rock with it? Like, what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea, because this was all new frontier. And I mean, I was 21 years old. I still hadn't graduated with my degree yet. So it was like I was taking a total leap of faith, and really thankful that I did, because it's paid off in a million ways, and just so fortunate But I mean, when you're 21 and you have the head football coach asking you to do something, you have to be pretty dumb to turn it down. So, I definitely was loving it, and it's gone way bigger and way better than I could have ever imagined at the time.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I love that. I love that. And I could totally see that too. Like right after ball is over, obviously you have the respect of your coach and you love him and respect him and revere him so highly. And he's like, yo, come do this. You're like, yes, sir. Absolutely. I am game. Now with Coach Carroll, I've always been a huge fan. And I know media wise, again, there's always ups and downs, regardless of who you are, where you come from, whatever, they're going to portray you as such. But quite literally coming from someone who is his right-hand man, when it comes to Coach Pete Carroll, what does he kind of mean to you? What has he kind of taught you? I know there's probably so much you can speak on with that, but just from your perspective and your angle when it comes to him, what has he kind of meant for you and your development along the way as a person?
Oh man, he's incredible. And the greatest thing about Coach Carroll is that he's so genuine. So the person you see on TV is exactly who he is in real life. And it's so rare having someone like that it's just so consistent and so real and so true to who he is deep down on the inside. He's had an incredible impact on my life, just an incredible mentor and just an incredible just person of influence in my life. He's helped me understand just the power of relationships, that everything's about relationship, and just how important it is to continue to nurture the relationships in your life. Because that's the most important thing in our lives. He's taught me about purpose in life. He's taught me about finding out who you are and finding out what you believe in and really spending the time to do that. Because it takes a while to kind of mine that out of you and really dig down. And so just really diving into that, man, I could go on forever. Coach, he's had just an amazing impact on me and so many others. And he's just really unique too. I mean, there's not many people like him. And he's okay about that. You know, he's fine being unique, and he loves being who he is. And I think that just has an amazing impact on a lot of people.
Right. No, that's, you know what? I kind of figured you would say that because, I don't know. He just kind of exudes that when you watch him on TV. And I think when certain people exude things, you can kind of tell it's a front or it's a fake or whatever. But with him, exactly like you said, it's so consistent and it's so all the time. It's like, damn, maybe this cat, that's exactly how he rocks and he rolls. And that's so refreshing to hear that the consistency you've seen on camera is also what you see behind. And I think that's what, makes him such a great coach, is those relationships and whatnot. And I love that, dude. Now, one thing that I'm really high on that you just kind of mentioned as well is taking the time to figure out who you are and what you believe in, and spending some time alone to really figure those things out through challenge, perspective, whatever. So for you, when it comes to staying humble, and because obviously we can hear that the way you talk, how down to earth and humble you are, or when it comes to, this crazy busy job that you have, staying sane, like, does that come from your faith? Does that come from your spouse? Does that come from your family? Like, where does that kind of come from for you in terms of that stability and kind of knowing who you are and what you place your trust in your life on?
Yeah, definitely. My faith is my rock and my foundation in my life. So that's been the biggest thing is my relationship with Jesus gives me identity and gives me purpose and gives me peace, gives me joy. And so that's number one in my life. And then surrounding myself with good people who continue to point me to the truth and continue to point me to who I am and encourage me in that way. That's been huge too. And those are probably the two biggest things in my life that really helped me in this journey. And that's not to say there aren't hard days, because there's definitely hard days for all of us, and days where the lies of the world are attacking us, and where we kind of feel shaky sometimes. But overall, to really have that peace that transcends all understanding, and to have a joy that supersedes circumstances of life, and to really experience love and acceptance. I can't get that from anywhere else. I can't get that from a human being.
Right.
It's got to come from my relationship with God.
Yeah, that's cool. And Has it always kind of been there for you? And again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like in terms of that faith and that rock and that foundation, like, is that something that's always been present in your life, or is that kind of developed over time or the last couple of years? Like, what has that journey kind of been like for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's not putting me on the spot at all. I love talking about this. So I grew up in a kind of a Christian culture. Texas is kind of Bible Belt,
Got it.
and I just grew up knowing about God, but I didn't know God personally. I didn't know that you could know God personally until I got to college and had a lot of people around me that had a personal relationship with Jesus. And that really opened my eyes and really helped me see that God wasn't just something to study like a subject in school, but it was a person to get to know. And ever since then, it's been a relationship that continues to grow. I mean, it's like any relationship in life, whether it's a friendship or a spouse or whoever. I mean, it's something that continues to grow over time. It's not like you arrive and you never have to communicate or spend time with a friend. It's like you always want to spend more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always want to get to know something more and more. And that's what it's been like in my relationship with God. And I'm so fortunate because when it was just an academic knowledge about God, it lacked the joy and the life that I get to experience now. And it's changed my life forever.
Powerful, powerful. I'm with you on that. And I've certainly had my ups and downs with it, but that's perfect. How you just said it's like a relationship, and that's exactly what it is. The more time you spend, the more time you invest, the purpose behind it, the more you're going to get out of it. And that's just how life works in general, regardless of the entity. No question about it, especially when it comes to that stuff. Powerful. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Now, Ben, in terms of what's next for you, are you rocking with the Seahawks for the next 50 years? Or you kind of envision maybe going a different direction soon, or like, did you kind of have a long-term plan, or you just kind of living in the present? Like, what are you kind of envisioning with that?
Yeah, I love that question. I get it all the time. And what God's really taught me throughout this journey is just to make the most of today and to
Yep.
really press into today, because he's got our future in his hand, and he's got a way better plan than I do for my own life. So I'm just going to keep making the most out of today and keep really just maximizing each moment and trusting and knowing that he's got an incredible future for me. And I just need to keep taking one step at a time and one day at a time. And that's kind of the double entendre with the book title, Walk On. So obviously it refers to a walk on like you and me being on a football team, but it also refers to walking on, to just taking those steps one day at a time, and just one step at a time. Just take a step and trust and know that you're heading to something great, that you have an amazing future in front of you. But you're not going to get there by taking a 1 year step at a time. It's got to be a 1 day, 1 hour step at a time. And
Wow.
just really making the most of each moment.
Wow. Beautiful. I love it. And I'm completely with that. Cause sometimes people ask, what's your 5-year goal, 10-year goal, 15? I'm like, man, you know what? I'm just trying to get through today, dog. And not in like
yeah, exactly.
And not in like I don't have goals, I don't have purpose, I don't have drive. But sometimes it's just like, you know what? I've put in some stuff out there before and it hasn't kind of worked out, and not in a bad way, but just because there was more out there for me. There was a different direction that I was supposed to go, and I did. And as a result, it's beyond my wildest comprehension. And that's how I kind of feel with that stuff too, is obviously you have goals, you work hard, you work your butt off, you do it for the right reasons. And you have goals and aspirations, but at the same time, still having the open mind to be open to the different possibilities that may be open to you in the next hour or a year or 2 years or 50 years, who knows? But
Yeah,
I think the mesh
I
point of
love
those
that.
two things is beautiful. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, that's great, dude. Now, to everyone out there, Ben speaks. He does this different stuff. He's incredible. I watch his stuff on YouTube. Obviously, I read his book, his social media, whatever. So, Ben, the floor is yours real quick, dude. Where can people find you, whether it is social media or maybe they're interested in getting you out to speak or whatnot? Where can they find you? Where can they reach you for stuff like that?
Yeah, everything is on my social media, Ben Malcolmson, or my website, benmalcolmson.com. You can get all information for whether it's speaking or information about the book, and exciting news too. The book is being turned into a movie too.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear
Get
that.
to follow along
Wow.
with that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's relatively new news, and it's really exciting. It's a long journey. It's got a couple years ahead of it still, but
Okay.
It's really, really exciting. Just more people to hear this story.
No
It's
doubt.
awesome.
Are you going to be in the movie?
Probably not.
Oh,
I'll be
man.
on the other side of the camera.
I got you. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I was going to say, you might have your own star on Hollywood Boulevard one day, man. Look at you, dog. Dallas, Texas, the Hollywood star. I'm with it. I'm with it, brother. Well, that's fantastic. And I'll tag all that stuff when I post it here on in the coming days, and your website and your book and the links to all that. So that's perfect. And last question, but before we wrap it up, and I try to end on a good note and a positive note and kind of in the right perspective with all my guests that I have on here. And today I think the way this thing's flowed, I don't want it to be any different. So the question is this, brother. When we're thinking about 70, 80, 90, 100 years from now, and you've lived this life, you've done your thing, but your time here on earth is dead and gone, and you're in your grave, whatever. But the impact that you have made is obviously still around the people you impacted, the things that you've done, what have you. When it comes to that stuff at that point in time, what do you want people to say about you when it comes to that point?
Oh man, that's a great question. I love that. I want people to say that I was a really great friend, and that I love people really well, and that I had great joy, and that honestly that I pointed people to Jesus. I think if I can live a life with those attributes, that's a life well lived, and that's really all I want.
Bang. Yep. That'll be a home run. And you're currently doing that. You most certainly did that for me through your book, and again, the different posts and the different stuff that I watch on you, and your influence shines, and not because you're trying to, but just because of, I think, who you are. And I know I'm talking like I know you, but I feel like I do, man. I'm telling you, just the way you're able to express yourself and do all these different things, it's powerful, and there's a light in there, and it's continuing to grow. So, Ben, again, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really enjoyed that stuff. I pray and I hope we can stay linked up for a while, and really excited to see what's next and what you got on the horizon. And with that movie, for sure, I'll be tuned in, but just anything in general. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your impact and your influence, and all the best moving forward, brother. Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So good to talk. Can't wait to keep talking.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all. And everybody else out there, that's going to wrap up another week on the Coach Cool podcast. And again, I always talk about challenge and perspective on this thing. And I think when you hear stories like this and you hear people's opinions and perspectives on different avenues, like Ben's and his story with walking on or working with Coach Carroll, like if that doesn't inspire you to get up off your butt and go do something or try something, I don't really know what will. And that's the reasonings behind these conversations, is not just to hear it from me, but to hear it from other people, and good people too, that are humble, that are coming from a great place like him. And again, so thankful for him to be on with me today. So as we go into the weekend, y'all have a fantastic one. Seek out those challenges and perspectives in the coming days. And as always, we will see you guys back here on Monday. Appreciate you all. Love you all. And God bless. Coach Cool. Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and just listening to the podcast in general. It means the absolute world to me that you guys choose to take time out of your day and your busy lives to listen to me and the perspectives that I offer and the challenges that I give out and the conversations with the guests that I have on this show. And I very much hope it's bringing some sort of value into your life and you're finding benefit from these conversations and from these perspectives. And if you are one of those people, whether you've listened once or you've listened to all the episodes, I'm going to ask you right now, if you feel so compelled, to leave a rating and to leave a review, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or however you choose to listen to this show. I would very much appreciate that, because that's how growth happens. That's how I can continue to learn and understand this thing from your guys' ears, not just my mouth, but make this thing more of a two-way street. And the more ratings and the more reviews we get, the bigger growth we can find and the more people we can reach with this thing as well. So again, if you feel so compelled, if you feel like this thing has brought value, I would very much appreciate that. Okay. But with that, I'm going to leave you guys for the day. And as always, I really, really appreciate you guys, and God bless. Coach Coop.